grab your popcorn, grab your candy, grab your soda.
Because game one of the Stanley Cup Final was like a movie.
The Oilers winning on home ice in dramatic fashion in overtime.
And we'll break it all down on this Wednesday night Stanley Cup Final edition of Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hello there, hockey fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On NHL Game Night, the first Stanley Cup Final post-game reaction edition ever of Locked On NHL Game Night. I'm Cam Stewart, a sad Boston Bruins fan, now on the third coast.
And I'm an honored Tyler Feldman, happy to be here, a lifelong Penguins fan, born and raised in Pittsburgh, but currently loving life in Austin, Texas. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Cam, the first ever Locked On NHL Game Night Stanley Cup Final recap. Game one did not disappoint. The Oilers, 2 goals down. They tied things up. They force overtime. Everyone's thinking overtime number 2, but not so fast.
What a classic. In the dying seconds, 31 seconds left in the first overtime. We did not get anywhere near Peter Klima territory. Leon Draisaitl ends it with his second goal of the game to complete the comeback and give the Oilers a 1-0 series lead, their first lead in a Stanley Cup Final in a while. Nick Zararis of Locked On Oilers breaking down the highlight reel. Very fun win in Edmonton.
Unlike last year, Leon Draisaitl has scored in the Stanley Cup Final, and this year he scored twice. Nick Zararis of Locked On Oilers here after an exhilarating game number 1 of the Stanley Cup Final that saw the Oilers prevail late in overtime 4-3 on a power play goal on a night where the action was frantic, to say the least. Both teams considerable opportunities. The Panthers at one point leading this game 3-1. The Oilers slowly but surely started working their way back into this game, ultimately scoring 3 straight goals to win game number 1 in a really convincing fashion. And as overtime went along, it really felt like the Oilers were starting to get a handle on how they needed to play this game. At one point, from the start of the third period through about midway through the overtime period, the Oilers were outshooting the Panthers 21-5, and by virtue of their forecheck, and shout out Vasily Podkolzin, who he's not going to get credit for forcing the delay of game penalty there towards the end of overtime, but a really noticeable night from the fourth line, him and Kapanen in particular flying around out there. Great performance from the Oilers. Stuart Skinner made all of the timely saves he needed to, and the Oilers showed they have the goods to hang with the Panthers, even this version of the Panthers. For everything you need to know about the Stanley Cup Final, be sure to check out Locked On Oilers wherever you get your podcasts.
We have had plenty of Oilers fans in the comment section this week when we talked about Leon Draisaitl's performance last year. Playing hurt. Some would say choking. I did that.
Cam, that was pointed at you, by the way. I need to make that clear.
Yeah. I was the one leading that train for sure. And now in 8 Stanley Cup Final games in his career, Leon Draisaitl has 2 goals after 0 in the first 7. Boy, Tyler, you talk about a guy who was ready to come back and get to this stage and prove he belongs here. And it was exactly what the Oilers needed tonight. He starts it, he finishes it.
Cam, some may say the dry spell is officially over. See what I did there? See what I did there?
Wow. That might need to go on the thumbnail, by the way. That might need to go on the thumbnail.
Let's put it on the thumbnail. Let's do that.
That's pretty good. If you're
wondering what's a thumbnail, well, it's the image that goes up on YouTube that you see. So that's what
made you click on it.
We're talking about, just in case you don't know. 66 seconds in to this hockey game. It felt like poetic justice. after all the heat that he received from UCAM and others,
Yes.
he delivers. Traffic in front, puck was on the edge. Bobrovsky allows that juicy rebound, and Draisaitl is there to bury it. 1-0 Oilers. Again, he did not score in the Stanley Cup Final. 7 games, 2. He did not put the puck in the net. He has 2 tonight. He has the first goal, and he has the last goal. That's what you call a Draisaitl sandwich. They should start selling those in Edmonton. I don't know what you're putting in the middle. You shouldn't put cat. I don't think that would be good, but it would be apropos for the Panthers.
Probably not, yeah.
But the way in which Edmonton was able to start the game, there was a little bit of a lull where we saw the Florida Panthers really catch fire and play really well, and that was after a couple Edmonton mistakes that we'll get into.
Yeah.
But Draisaitl, the star on a star-studded team, the big one that needed to come play tonight, came to play and delivered when his team needed him most. Special night in Edmonton.
And maybe you're putting some beef in the middle of that sandwich, because that's what it felt like at the beginning of this game. A lot of hits, very physical start to this one. And weirdly, in the middle of this first period, we get 3 penalties in a 24-second span. It was odd. But anyway, we get the Draisaitl goal 66 seconds in. It's the quickest one to open up a Stanley Cup Final series since 1976. Reggie Leach opening up against Montreal that year. Then Sam Bennett scoring a classic Sam Bennett goal. As soon as it goes in, I think a lot of people outside of South Florida, including myself and my Evanston apartment, was yelling, "Goalie interference. Look at him. He takes him out. That's classic Sam Bennett." And even on the first couple replays, you're like, yeah, nobody tripped him. But they did. Brett Kulak tripped him, not the guy that was actually kind of marking him in the low slot. Bennett gets the deflection. It's 1-1. Edmonton challenges for goaltender interference. They lose. Cats to the power play. They make the most of it. Brad Marchand makes it 2-1 Florida with about 7.5 to go in the first period. Then we get all the penalties. Edmonton is really out shooting them for a good, healthy bit of this game. But
Timeout.
Yeah.
Timeout real quickly for a little fun fact. Brad Marchand's power play goal to make it 2-1 Florida helped Florida set a new NHL postseason record. They have 50 road goals.
About half of those were the last 2 games in Toronto, I think.
They beat out the 93 Kings, who scored 49 goals on the road during that postseason. That's impressive.
Really impressive stat. Yeah, it's a really impressive stat.
That's crazy.
And they added to it. They got number 51, 2 minutes into the second. Sam Bennett gets it again. It's a really slick play. The second assist for Nate Schmidt. He gets kind of a partial break because I don't remember who the Edmonton defenseman was, but he had pinched too far into the play. Joel Arvidsson answers a few minutes later. It was their only shot for the period for a long time. It's really one that Bobrovsky should have had. He gets a decent look at it, hits between his pad. I think it hits off his glove and then over his pad and in.
It was a nice play. I mean, dropped it off right for Arvidsson, and Viktor Arvidsson used the screen well and let it fly. So, I mean, maybe Bobrovsky should have had it, but there was traffic in front. It was a really nice setup offensively by Edmonton.
And we are at 3-2 where that stands until 13.5 minutes to go. The play that Gretzky called in the second intermission saying this is what McDavid needs to do. He does. He stops up. He tries to chip one, actually, I think it was to Evander Kane in the low slot. It gets past him. Mattias Ekholm. He's back, baby. He gets his first goal since March, I think they said after the game. He rips one past Bobrovsky. We've got a tie game, and it stays tied for a long time.
McDavid's high to low work there on that goal was just exceptional.
McDavid was on one tonight.
He makes it look so easy with how he skates and how he sees the ice and how he sees everything else. His vision, the high to low from the blue line down to the goal line, and then finding Ekholm for that game-tying goal. It was a special play. And McDavid, he didn't have a goal tonight. He had a couple really great chances. Hit the post in the first period, and then had a really great chance, I think, in the third period.
Yes, that was a great Bobrovsky save. But I put McDavid almost went full McDavid, I believe, is what's in my notes here on that play.
But McDavid delivers a key pass at a key moment late in this hockey game to help force overtime.
Yeah, and that overtime was all Oilers, man. Your guy, Kasperi Kapanen, had this unbelievable chance.
He was flying.
What was that? Where did that come from?
He was a man man on a mission.
By the way, he had 2 assists in this game.
Everyone was sluggish. Kapanen was just that guy wants a Stanley Cup. That's what I was seeing from Kapanen.
Split the defense right down the middle. Nice move. Just couldn't finish it. I think it does hit the outside of the post. And then Trent Frederick gets a golden opportunity backdoor. It completely muffs it. It ends up becoming a nice save by Bobrovsky, but it didn't even look like that puck was going on goal. And then with 2 minutes left in the overtime, Evan Bouchard shot out of a cannon. Unreal burst of speed. He leaves Gustav Forsling for dead, a guy who had a great series against Edmonton last year, but couldn't tuck it by on the backhand forehand. And then seconds after that, Tomáš Nosek throws it into the stands. You can't give these Oilers a chance on the power play in overtime. The most poetic ending an Oilers fan could ask for. Perfect hockey. McDavid to Draisaitl. Ball game. 1-0. The Oilers lead this series on what is an incredible night in Northern Alberta. But Tyler, it's only one game.
You say that, Cam, but I'll leave you with this before we go to break. Game 1 winners have won the last 4 Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
And in the history of the Stanley Cup Final, teams who have won Game 1 have gone on to win the Stanley Cup 77% of the time.
Ooh.
Which is a pretty significant. I only wrote that down because I thought to myself, wow, that is a significant percentage. And I believe I saw that the percentage goes up to maybe 83% if it's the home team that wins game 1. So
shout out to those 11 Canucks. They blew both of those.
Just keep those numbers in mind. Let those numbers settle in your stomach comfortably as we go through the rest of this final.
But the last team to win game 1 of a Stanley Cup final in Edmonton, I believe, was the Dallas Stars in 2020, and they did not win that series. So take it all into account. Take it all into account. That's what the Panthers are thinking on the other side. Like, hey, it's just one game. Let's take a look at it from the Florida side of things when we come back on Locked On NHL Game Night. All right, I got a question for you guys. You ever look at that bank account of yours and say, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, your favorite team's jersey with the Stanley Cup Final patch on it, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO. It gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, okay? It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. You stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps like you do with your streaming services, you can use Monarch to check your finances, tracking, and even plan those long-term goals all in one place. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's 50% off. monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Coming back to you on Locked On NHL Game Night after Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. Edmonton takes a 1-0 series lead. Guys, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. About 90% of you watching, on average, are not subscribed to the channel. We are breaking it down after every Stanley Cup Final game and so much more from guys like us, the local experts. You already heard from Nick Zararis. You will hear from Armando Velez in just a minute. From the Panthers side of things, Tyler, this is uncharted territory for this group. And what I mean by that is going into this game, the Panthers were 20-0 in postseason games under Paul Maurice in which they led after the first period. Not after two, after the first period. They hold on to these leads. They are now 20-1 in such games. It's the first time in feels like a while here, we have seen this Panthers team get rattled. But Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers, don't know if we've rattled his cage just yet.
Ain't that a rough way to lose? What is up, guys? Armando Velez here from the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, here to quickly break down the Panthers' 4-3 loss against the Edmonton Oilers in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. And the ice was tilted in the first period to Edmonton's direction, even though the Panthers pounced twice, 2 goals on 5 shots for them. The Panthers couldn't take advantage of the second period where the ice was tilted in their direction. After they went up 3-1, Edmonton responds quickly. The Oilers tied it up in the third period, and the Panthers only 8 shots after the first 40 minutes. That's not going to be good enough. Multiple icings for the Panthers, and then a delay of game penalty by Tomas Nosek, and Leon Draisaitl ends it in overtime, his second goal of the game after having no goals in the previous Stanley Cup Final between these two teams. We're going to break all this down and more on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, your team every day.
And definitely check out Armando and Nick's shows. They're doing wall-to-wall coverage as we go throughout this week from the local fans' perspective. It's great stuff. But Tyler, it was almost very close to being a just patented Panthers game. Usually they are outplaying their opponents, but even in this postseason, when they haven't been, they still come away with wins more often than not. And this was Edmonton's game in terms of carrying the play for so much of it, but yet it was Florida's to throw away. It was a 3-1 lead. So with all of that taken into account, did the Panthers blow this game?
It's a tough question, Cam. I'll say this in the first period. Let's go back to the first period. Edmonton scores first. The crowd in Edmonton tonight at Rogers Place was awesome. Stanley Cup Final hockey north of the border just hits a little bit differently. Appreciate all the fans up in Canada, especially in Edmonton tonight, because that was incredible. When Sam Bennett scores, though, the play gets reviewed. You hear all the boos. The refs "you suck" chants come out. And you think to yourself, uh-oh, because now Florida not only ties the game, but they get a penalty. They go on the power play, and then not even 2 minutes later, Brad Marchand makes it 2-1. And you're thinking, uh-oh, here we go again. And then the rest of that first period, despite Edmonton outshooting Florida 15-6 in the first 20, I really thought the physicality that we've seen so frequently and so consistently from the Florida Panthers the last 3 playoffs that we've seen out of them, the last 3 seasons, that physicality was there to wrap up that first period. And then they got that quick goal 2 minutes into the second period, and I thought, okay, here we go.
They're in their wheelhouse.
Are things going to unravel? But you know what? Having said all of what I just said, and to try to answer your question, Cam, I don't think Florida blew this game. What happened was Stuart Skinner turned things around. He was a brick wall from 2 minutes into the second period through almost 3 full periods. Stuart Skinner did not allow a goal.
Yeah.
Incredible performance from Stuart Skinner, making 29 saves on 32 shots. And hey, Bobrovsky was good too, 42 saves on 46 shots.
Especially
but the goaltenders came to play. They made some fantastic saves on both ends to keep both of their teams in this hockey game. So I would say that, and this is what was said by Leon Draisaitl post-game on TNT, talking to Panger afterwards, after the big win. Panger asked him what changed. You know what Leon Draisaitl said? He said maturity. He said you could sense the maturity in this group this year versus, let's say, last year. And I agree with him. You saw that tonight, because an old Edmonton team maybe would have let the wheels fall off and it could have been a 5-6 goal loss. Instead, Stuart Skinner stands tall. Edmonton defensively looking great, holding the Florida Panthers in check, and then overcoming 3 scoreless power plays to then on the 4th power play of the game, bury it when it matters most. So a really impressive win by Edmonton, not a blown loss by Florida, just Edmonton was the better team tonight. So congratulations to the Oilers. They go up 1-0. Where does this series go from here? I don't know, Cam. These are 2 really good teams. That was a great start. Incredible start to the Stanley Cup Final.
And it did. It did feel like the first time in weeks here that the Panthers weren't like clearly the better team in a game. They had that kind of weird one against Carolina. I don't think they were awful in that game that they lost to Carolina. So it's been a while since we were like, oh, the Panthers are the best team we've ever seen. It's been a while since we haven't been saying that after a game, but they'll bounce back on Friday night. Whether it's a win, We'll see, but they will be better on Friday night in game 2, just from what we've seen from this team over the last couple of years. Let's talk about game 2. What will continue in this series? What will not? Is this a must-win game for Florida? Let's talk about it next on Locked On NHL Game Night. Locked On NHL Game Night after a fully exciting game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. The Oilers win it in overtime. A couple of assists for Kasperi Kapanen, a couple of assists for Connor McDavid on the game-tying and game-winning goals. That's a guy showing up for you. Nate Schmidt with 2 assists as well for Florida, and a couple of 2-goal scorers, Sam Bennett, and of course, Leon Draisaitl. So the Panthers look in the mirror here. All right, they're no stranger to the Stanley Cup Final either. This is number 3 in a row. Okay, they know they can't. They got a lot of guys in that locker room that know one game does not make or break a series. Now they stay out in Edmonton. Game 2, Friday night. Tyler, let's start with this. With how good this Panthers team has been this whole postseason, and how much we've seen them turn it on, and how much we've seen them, the one time we've seen it, them come back from a 2-0 series deficit on the road, does Friday feel like a must-win for the Cats?
It's an important game, but I don't think it's must-win. I mean, look at last year. Cats won the first 3. Yeah. Edmonton wins the last 3, and then it's Florida who wins game 7. So history says, yes, game 2, important for Florida. I think you'd rather even this series going back home to Sunrise as opposed to being down 2-0. But look, Edmonton's now 7-1 on their home ice in these playoffs. Granted, Florida came in 8-2 on the road. They're now 8-3 on the road in these playoffs. So that pairing, something's got to give, okay? You've also got Connor McDavid, who I really feel.
By the way, do you remember what that one loss was on home ice for Edmonton? It was that buzzer beater from Vegas. That weird, wacky play that went off Draisaitl and in with .something seconds left. That's it, by the way.
That seems like 8 years ago.
It kind of does. If you had told me that was 2 postseasons ago, I probably would have believed you. That was Stuart Skinner's first game back. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
What I was about to say, that was a good interjection, Cam. One of your better interjections that we've had during these playoffs.
Most of them
Conn Smythe, maybe in your future. You might get at least 1 vote from me. Connor McDavid, I actually thought Florida did a pretty good job of keeping him in check at points. Now, he did have some really good scoring chances. He could have had 2 goals tonight, given those scoring chances that we talked about earlier on this show. But how do you keep him in check for a prolonged period of time? Because he seems hungry. You now have Leon Draisaitl off the schneid, 2 goals in the Stanley Cup Final. For Florida, the goal will be to figure out how to stay out of the penalty box. Let's not take delay of game penalties late in overtime against a team like Edmonton. What are we doing? We've got to tighten things up if you're Florida, because this is not an Edmonton team that is coming with that inexperience that we saw last year. That maturity that Draisaitl talked about post-game, it is there. So, look, I don't think it's must-win for Florida, but I really don't think you want to go back to Sunrise down 2-0 against a team like these Edmonton Oilers.
I did have one cynical friend text me about Tomáš Nosek, former Bruin, saying, boy, I'm glad everyone could see that he really sucks. It gives away the delay game penalty.
I'm interested about that conversation between, if he's cynical, how do you consider yourself in that conversation?
Oh, I'm still much more cynical, for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a lot of back and forth. We had a Marchand goal. We had a Trent Frederick miss. We had the whole time thinking that the Bruins are going to name a new head coach in the middle of a Stanley Cup Final game, because that's what they do. But last thing I want to talk about here on this game tonight and looking ahead towards game 2. I'm trying to think of how to kind of say this question, but it's like, what part of this from either team was really sustainable? Like, was there anything for you that you were like, that was fluky for Edmonton, or Florida's not going to do this again? Like, was there anything that you saw in this game that stuck out to you like that?
Nothing fluky. I will say, when Viktor Arvidsson scored 3:17 into the second period to make it a 3-2 game, From that point on, if the Oilers can replicate how they played, there's no chance they're not winning the Stanley Cup.
And it might be quick if they play like that.
There's no doubt. Truthfully, Leon Draisaitl scoring at 66 seconds into this hockey game, I thought, okay, let's go. But then you saw that quick pocket from Florida. Can Florida expand that consistency, or are they going to need to rely on Edmonton's mistakes to play like that? Because even strength, second and third period, for the majority outside of that Sam Bennett goal 2 minutes in, that consistency that we saw, I mean, even Kapanen skating the way he skated tonight, seeing all these different guys, the big question that you had, Cam, was what is this Oilers team going to look like without Zach Hyman? Well, they had a lot of guys step up tonight. They really did.
Yeah, big time.
That made a huge difference and showed me, and should show a lot of you, that these Oilers are a legitimate team to lift the Stanley Cup. That's what I said. Oilers in 6.
Yeah,
now it was a close game tonight, but they got the win. So,
and a word of warning, because the Panthers do, like what you were talking about in there, they really capitalize on teams' mistakes. A lot of times they're aggressive, don't get me wrong, but they're kind of waiting for you to make a mistake. If you're waiting for Edmonton to go catatonic, look at the last series. That's what Dallas was waiting for. They were one bad period away from sweeping that damn thing, and it was because they went catatonic, right? They did. They totally blew up in the third period of that game one. But if that's what you're waiting on, and you're waiting on them to take stupid penalties and make dumb plays and give up 2-on-1s, that's not going to happen. Like, that was last year's Edmonton. I don't think that happens this time. And it's evidenced by the fact that Armando said it in his short. For almost 2 full periods, 39 and a half minutes, the Panthers put up, 8 shots? 8 shots in that span? Like, that's unacceptable. And that goes to this Edmonton team defense that we've been really giving a ton of praise to throughout this postseason, because there were still plenty of people on the Florida side, I think general fans of the NHL going into this series that were saying, I mean, they still got John Klingberg out there, right? Still Stu Skinner in net. I'm like, guys, this is different. And it maybe didn't show you that the first 40 minutes, but the next 40, they certainly showed you that. Defensively, this is a completely different team from last year.
Cam, 2 more notes before we sign off tonight.
Yes.
Leon Draisaitl ties an NHL record with his 3rd overtime goal in these playoffs.
And that doesn't even count the buzzer beater that went off him. That was a Vegas overtime, or a Vegas.
Technically,
winner.
He's got 4.
I'm going to count that as 4.
His team winning 3 of those 4. Number 2, it's only one game. It's only one game.
One game.
So I know we've been praising the Oilers tonight, but they've got to win 3 more against a very, very, very good Florida team. So it'll be interesting to see how the Panthers bounce back. Do they bounce back, or does Edmonton continue to steamroll? Should be fun. Should be fun.
Oh, that's all we do is have fun here. Because if you think Edmonton's going to just get into a bunch of mistakes, you're wrong. And if you don't think the Cats are going to bite back, you would also be wrong. But that is the night that was in the Stanley Cup Final. The Oilers, now just 3 wins away from lifting the Holy Grail and bringing it back to Canada for the first time since 1993, a little before our time anyway. Be sure, guys, to like.
That's right around my time.
Yeah, but you do you remember the 93 Stanley Cup Final?
Yeah, I was I was born in 93, so
yeah.
So of course I do.
So you very memorable one for you? Yeah. I remember the premiere.
My favorites were 91 and 92 though.
Those were pretty good. You were in development.
Yeah.
those times.
Parents were celebrating those wins appropriately.
Apparently. Yeah.
Apparently. Yeah, I see what you did there.
Anyway, guys, it's getting too late tonight for us. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Be sure to get in the comment section below. What do you think is going to change in this series? Do you think the Cats bite back in game 2? What is the key to victory? Who you got winning and in how many games? Let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, find us wherever you find your podcasts as well. We are here after every Stanley Cup final game and even the nights in between because our show is going that well. You'll hear from Eddie and Shukri tomorrow night. And for all these 7 nights, you'll hear from the local experts, the guys like us. Alongside Tyler Feldman, I'm Cam Stewart. We will see you later on Locked On NHL Game Night.